Good day everyone, we are from Group 3 and we are going to discuss about German historical school, 5 major questions and contributions of Friedrich List, Wilhelm Rocher and Gustav Mahler in developing the ideas of the school. This school emerged in the 1840s, beginning with the work of Friedrich List and Wilhelm Rocher. It remained influential until 1917, which marked the death of Gustav Mahler, one of its leading figures. By that time, many of the school ideas had already been absorbed into mainstream economic thought, and the school itself ceased to exist as a distinct movement. Much like the socialists, German historical economists were often critical of classical economics, favoring a more historical and contextual approach to economic analysis.
Hello, my name is Muhammad Mustaqeem with the matrix number of 292691. Today I'll be elaborating a bit on historical background for German historical school. To begin with, after the Napoleonic Wars took place during 1830 until 1832, Germany was divided into 39 separate states, and most of them actually practiced monarchical system or undemocratic system. This caused Germans, or many Germans actually, wanted an unity and constitutional reform, but the request for that actually took place around half a century. All right, the Germany struggles against Napoleon caused arousing patriotism and nationalism emotions inside the people. For an example, Prussia, the largest, richest, most militaristic and most powerful, what we can say as a very excellent country, is the one that being dominating the whole country, is the largest state in Germany. Foreign and native conservatives saw Prussia as a defensive valve against democracy and socialism. Because they are the largest, they are the strongest, actually they were made into a defensive walls against democracy and socialism. Why? Without democracy and socialism is a proof that Prussia can actually be strong and big. Bismarck social legislation that was enacted expressed the paternalism of the monarchy and evoked loyalty and patriotism among the German workers. Why? Because he bragged that in Germany, the kings made the revolutions. So that's actually evoke the loyalty and patriotism among the German workers. German historical school defend and rationalize the German way of life by questioning the British classical economy doctrines, which we know as laissez-faire. Okay, why? Because they thought that it is inapplicable for the German, and it is inapplicable to the German situation. Why? Competition and freedom were restricted in Germany, and mercantilism or mercantilist regulations still persisted in Germany, at least until the formation of empire in 1872. Why? Long after they actually disappear from the British scene. For an example, Frederick List suggested a high tariff against imports of manufacturing goods to protect newly emerging domestic industry, which it also can be said as infant industries. But then German historical school was actually divided, weak, and it is actually primarily agricultural. This situation actually brought in nationalism, patriotism, militarism, paternalism, and massive government intervention to change the pattern and also repair the situation that they were facing at that time. And also, it's also one of the reasons because Germany of the middle 19th century was far behind England in the development of industry, and its economist reasoned that government assistance was required for it to catch up. That's actually how all of this happened. A bit of historical background. There are few major tenets which I'm going to be discussing. First, it's actually applying a dynamic or a flexible evolutionary perspective in its study of society. It's actually concentrate on cumulative development and growth. Sometimes it's also can be related to Darwin's evolutionism in biology, which starts with born, develops, grows, finally decays and dies. This is also to address that society is constantly changing. Other than that, the emphasis on the positive role of government also were given. For example, why? Why? To be said, because German historical school was nationalistic while classical economics was individualistic and cosmopolitan. The state of Germany fostered industry, transportation, and economic growth. In the process of defending a unified economy, it was easy to develop an ardent nationalistic glorification of the state. By means, it's actually easier to bring the people together when we evoke the nationalism part in their emotion, in their self. Historical school actually have a great prominence to the need for state intervention in the economic affairs, and it also stressed that the community actually has interests of its own that are quite distinct from those of the individual, which were highlighted in classical economics, because it's actually individual focused. The scope is individual. Meanwhile, government. German historical school focus more on a national, a unity part of economy. Inductive or historical approach is one of method or the importance of studying the economy. We must study economy in inductively or historically. Economic and other social phenomena are interdependent by means because it's actually interdependent. Political economy cannot be treated adequately except in combination with other branches of social science. It always need each other. It undertook massive inductive studies using primary source material and studying changing social institutions. This historical school claimed that its historical method allowed it to study all the forces of an economic phenomena, all the facts of economic behavior, not merely their economic logic. By means studying economy inductively or by historical approach actually allows you to understand economy more and allows you to have a reason not just based on mere economic logic but based on fact that are identified as economic behavior. Advocacy of conservatism reform or advocacy of conservative reform. It must determine a standard of the proper production and distribution of wealth so that the demands of justice and morality are satisfied. The German state should be entrusted with the amelioration of conditions for the common man. German historical school actually promoted moderate reforms that frustrated the drive for a more radical democratization of society, such as promoted by socialists. And as a result of this, loyalty, nationalism, and civility to the state were more widespread in Germany. Why? Because the economic approach was there to be as one, to be united. That's why the German, they have a lot of nationalism, patriotism in their self and their emotion. In every action they take, eventually it benefits the country, the state more. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is LIYANA binti MAHAZIR and my metric number is 298359. So the German historical school didn't just shape economic thought. It also served specific interests. It had close academic and political ties with figures like smaller influencing university appointments while marginalizing opposing view like the Austrian school. It strongly supported nationalism and the imperial government. Its ideas mostly benefit the elites, which is businesses, finance and land-owning classes. By backing moderate reforms, it aimed to prevent radical democracy. The state offered limited concessions, keeping power centralized rather than letting people earn real rights. Socially, the school promoted loyalty to the regime and discouraged true social change through a paternalistic state approach. In short, while it claimed to support national development, it mainly upheld the status quo.
Now I will continue with the how was the historical school valid, useful or correct in its time. First, evolutionary approach. The evolutionary approach to society and economic thought provide a suitable solution to abstract thinking of the classical and marginalist school. The historical school was on point when it said that for economists to fully understand the present world, they need to get familiar with changing historical events and changing conditions in the environment of economics. Second, inductive method. Inductive factual studies were required for this task. New theories and new ideas had to be evoked to understand new situations, and these new theories and ideas require very careful testing through the use of empirical data.
Hello everyone. Now I want to explain about which tenets of the historical school become lasting contributions. So firstly I want to explain inductive method. The inductive method involves gathering detailed data from historical events and case studies, then it deriving general principles from these observations. Economists concur that historical empirical data is necessary to test existing theories, create new ones, and explain the present. This emphasis on empirical research laid the groundwork for modern econometrics and the widespread use of data driven analysis in economics today. Nowadays, historical inductive method has become generally accepted as complementary to the deductive approach. For an example, econometrics analysis normally incorporates both abstract theory and also empirical testing. Econometrics, which integrates abstract theory with empirical data, is a direct lesson of the historical school's inductive approach. After that, second tenet of the historical school became lasting contribution is attack on laissez-faire. We can say that the future trend was this theme. It is because the historical school's members understood that free enterprise without restrictions does not always result in best outcomes for society at the large. Especially prominent in 9th century Germany made several lasting contributions, particularly one its critique of laissez-faire capitalism. After that, they were right in their belief that reform can be a substitute for worse upheavals brought on by sharping class distinctions. The historical school focused on the importance of institutions. For in examples, they focus on laws, customs, and political systems in shaping economic behavior. Third tenet of the historical school is we can say that German nationalism advocated by the historical economists overreached itself as it evolved into a franchised militarism. Throughout the century that ended in 1940, there was growing optimism that world peace and harmony could be attained. Other than that, these internationalist feelings of a goodwill were started by the strong note of a nationalism that the German historical economists struck. It also helped shape early development economics and evolutionary theories of a growth. Their ideas and purpose unintentionally contributed to the climate in Germany that led to World War One and Two.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hi, my name is Riana binti Mahazir and my metric number is 298359. So I would like to talk about Friedrich List. So let me take you back to early 19th century Germany, where a young Friedrich List was born. So from the beginning, he was a bit of rebel. He didn't care much for formal schooling, and he definitely didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps in the tanning trade. Despite that, he rose quickly. By 1816, he had already become a ministerial undersecretary. So can you imagine that a young man climbing the ranks of governments, driven by the vision rather than tradition? Then at just 29, he became a professor at the University of Tübingen. But this wasn't someone who played it safe. His radical political views is the same ones that made him brilliant, also got him dismissed. Still, he didn't stop. Lee saw that the German state as disjointed and economically suffocated, with 38 separate trade barriers acting, as he described, like indicators that block blood flow. He believed that in uniting them, not just in politically, but also economically. So he proposed both reforms, which is abolishing tolls, tithes, and excise duties, introducing trial by jury, and also implementing a single direct income tax and reducing civil service bloat. These were not just policies, but they were pieces of a vision for a modern, united, and industrial Germany. But both ideas come with the consequences. For pushing too hard or too fast, he was imprisoned for treason and exiled to the United States from 1825 to 1832. Yet even in exile, Lee's mind was racing, absorbing American economic ideas and sharpening his vision for what Germany could become. This was a beginning of a thinker who would challenge the very foundations of a classical economics. So as you can see, in 1816, he began his career as a government clerk and rose to become undersecretary. By 1819, he was a professor at the University of Tübingen and started advocating for unification of German states through economic policies like the Zollverein. In 1820, Lis was elected to his state legislature and pushed for reforms, although his ideas were often dismissed. Between 1835 and 1832, he lived in the United States where he worked as a farmer, journalist, and promoter, but also faced financial struggles. Finally, in 1846, plagued by poor health, money problems, and disappointment over Germany's slow unification, this tragically ended his own life. His legacy, however, lived on in economic talks. Now, let's explore Friedrich Lee's views on economic development. Unlike abstract economists of his time, Lee emphasized the importance of historical and national context. He believed economic development should serve the nation's power, not just individual wealth. For Lee, a strong united nation was the foundation for both material and moral well-being. He outlined 5 stages of economic development, beginning with the savage, then pastoral, agriculture, followed by agriculture and manufacturing, and finally agriculture, manufacturing, and commercial. He saw the nation as the highest form of association where individuals, thought weak alone, could thrive together. His ideas lead to groundwork for national economic planning in modern states. Continuing with the Lee's economic talk, he strongly supported the infant industry agreement, which means using tariff to protect young domestic industry until they are ready to compete globally. He argued that free trade only benefits nations at the same development level, which isn't always the case. He also criticized Adam Smith, pointing out that Smith's free trade theory ignores national interests and the gaps between the developed and developing countries. Classical economists disbelieve wrongly assume constant peace and equity. Finally, on the role of the state, Lee insists that governments must actively guide their economies from lower to higher stage of development. In his view, protectionism is not ideal but necessary, a temporary step to long-term national strength. Friedrich Lee's ideas remain highly relevant today, especially for developing countries. He believed that strategic government intervention is essential in guiding economic growth. Rather than embracing free trade too early, Lee emphasized the need for nations to first build up their industrial base. Only after achieving a certain level of developing should a country consider full liberalization. This stage approach allows emerging economies to strengthen their industry and become globally competitive, avoiding the risk of being overwhelmed by stronger, more established economies. Friedrich Lee's ideas closely align with what we call now strategic trade theory. He strongly advocated for tariff, as a way to protect young domestic manufacturing industry until they are strong enough to compete globally. Lees argued that free trade mostly benefit nations that are already industrialized, leaving developing countries at a disadvantage. While he acknowledged that tariff might cause short-term losses, what he calls sacrifices of value, he believed these were justified by the long-term national gains in productivity and economic strength. Lastly, Lees rejected Adam Smith's one-size-fits-all approach to free trade. He insisted that trade policy should be tailored to each country's stage of development. Strategic trade policies can have both positive and negative impacts. On the positive side, protected markets often help firms grow quickly by reducing early competition. As these firms scale up, they achieve lower production thanks to the economies of scales and eventually become strong enough to compete and even dominate in global markets. There is also a broader benefit, which is success in one sector can spill over into others, like technology or supply chains, boosting the entire economy. However, there are also a risk. Protectionist policies can lead to the retaliation from other countries, sparking trade wars and reducing global trade efficiency. Additionally, if more countries adopt tariff, it can drive up global trade barriers and also lower overall world output.
Now, we will move to another character, which is Wilhelm Roscher. He studied history and political science. Wilhelm Roscher was born in 1817 and lived until 1894. He was a German economist who served as a professor of political economy, first at Göttingen and later at Leipzig. Roscher is best known for his five-volume book titled Economic Science, which took him 40 years to complete, from 1854 to 1894. This work became widely used in German schools and was translated into English as Principles of Political Economy. Roscher belonged to the older historical school, which aimed not to reject classical economics but to supplement it. This differed from the younger historical school, led by figures like Gustav Mahler, who wanted to replace classical theory entirely with historical and policy-focused analysis. While Roscher criticized classical economics, he still built upon its ideas. A central idea in Roscher's work is the historical method. He believed that economics could not be separate from history, culture, and society. According to Roscher, to understand one part of national life, such as the economy, we need to understand all of its parts. For example, language, religion, art, and science law. He viewed economics as an organic, evolving system, shaped by its historical and social context. Roscher emphasized the important role of the state in economic life. He believed that the political economy is deeply connected to political science, especially in areas like public finance and economic legislation. In his view, the state was the largest and most influential economy, constantly shaping and guiding the national economy. He argued that, just as a psychologist cannot study the human body without studying the brain, economists must consider the role of the state when analyzing a national economy. Roscher has a balanced view of human nature. He believed that many economic policies in disagreement from misapplying good ideas to the wrong situation, rather than from ignore or bad intention. He thus suggests that with better historical understanding and accurate data, we could resolve many of these disagreements. Roscher also believed that societies evolve from immature to mature forms. However, even mature civilizations are not immune to decline and decay. This idea helps promote cultural humility. Finally, even though Roger criticized classical economics, he did not reject theory altogether. In fact, he includes a simplified version of classical price theory in his textbook. His goal was to find the historical roots of economic laws. He believed that theory and empirical data should work together to form a more complete understanding of economy.
Now I want to present about history of Gustav Schmoller and his contributions in developing the ideas of our history school. Okay, now we look at history of Gustav von Schmoller. So he was born in 24 June 1938 at Holben, Germany. He was died in 27 June 1970 at the age of 79 at Bad Harzburg, German. Schmoller was the leading figure of a younger historical school. He was a professor of political science of Halle, Starhawk, and Merlin. So far we can look at he is a really smart work person. So he was a founder and major leaders of the Variant for Social Politic Association of Social Policy. So this organization promoted the idea of increased government involvement in social and economic matters and push for the social legislation. Furthermore, Schmoller was an active member of the Academy of Science and also of the House of Lords of the Prussian Diet. Schmoller wished to use historical monographs as the sole foundation for the development of economics. After that, he was very antagonistic to the deductive method as he is one of the scholars that contributes inductive approach in economics. Now I want to explain about the Methandist spread between Karl Menger and Gustav Schmoller. Firstly, a famous controversy between Schmoller GSH and Karl Menger, Austrian marginalized school. So this school, led by Karl Menger and others, took a more deductive and theoretical approach. They believed that economics could be studied in a more scientific manner, with a focus on individual actions and the principles of a human behavior. Secondly, methodite street. So we can say that battle of methods, inductive vs deductive. So it translated as a battle of methods refers to a key debate in German economics that took place in the late ninth century. Then we look at the deductive method of Gustav Schmoller. So first of all, the analytic and abstract approach pioneered by David Ricardo. So Ricardo began with basic premises and then used to logic to deduct generalizations. So its tendency is to use assumptions to bolster its arguments. So many members of the marginalist school supported the partial equilibrium analysis method, which was helpful for abstracting from the complexity of the real world to gain a better understanding of it. So, by allowing one variable to change while temporarily holding all other variables constants, the researchers were able to break down complex phenomena on step at the time. Meanwhile, it emphasized the importance of studying the economy inductively or historically. The political economy can only be properly studied in the conjunction with the other social science and disciplines due to the interdependence of economic and other social phenomena. So, from part to the whole, from particulars to the general, from facts to the theories. GSH assessed that by using a historical approach, it was able to examine not just the economic logic of an economic phenomena, but also all of the forces and also its experts. Now I want to explain about the methane district between Schmoller vs. Menger. So according to Menger, the historians have stepped upon the territory of our science like foreign conquerors in order to force upon us their language, their customs, their terminology, their methods, and to fight intolerantly every branch of inquiry which does not correspond with their special method. For an example, contemporary economic analysis normally incorporates for both abstract theorizing and empirical testing. For an example, the data for most of empirical testing are historical as opposed to being derived directly from experiments. Then the Menger responded to Schmoller's negative review of the book in his Jahrbuch with an irate pamphlet called Errors of Historicism. So the Schmoller printed an announcement stating that he was unable to review Menger's pamphlet because he had written it to the author right away after receiving a copy for his Jahrbuch. So, allowing with the pamphlet, the Menger will as included an insulting letter which Schammler has printed. So the in the end, the economists believe that both inductive and deductive methods are important and they normally supplement each other. Now we are look at the social reform. Firstly, Schmoller thought it was important to promote ethical value judgment. It is because the state and all social groups could implement a paternalistic social reform policy to bring about justice in the economic system. Justice in the economic system could be achieved through paternalistic policy of a social. It also reformed by the state and all social group. After that, he and his students published countless intensive historical studies to provide an empirical foundation for national economic theory, but they were unable to generate an economic theory. Finally, the guiding principles of the social reform is much more equitable distributions of income. Now I want to explain about protectionism. So if we all look at Dipset being a strong supporter of free trade when he was younger, Schmoller's opinions on protectionism evolved in his later years. He phrased that Friedrich List and Alexander Hamilton and his teachers and supported a protective tariff for Germany in 1901. Schmoller expanded on Lee's infant industry argument to support tariffs, and he believed that tariffs are global weapons that, with careful application, could be advantageous to a nation. In conclusion, Friedrich List and William Rocher's publications in the 1840s mark the beginning of the German historical school, which came to the end with the passing of Gustav Schmoller in 1917. And GSH economics worked to improve the lives of the ordinary people by raising their standard of a living, healthy, and productivity as factory workers. In the result, nationalism, patriotism, militarism, paternalism become a strong sense of a duty, and hard work and intensive government intervention not only support Germany's industrial growth, but also fortify the loyalty of workers and the ordinary people to the state and keep them from endorsing the extreme socialist ideology. That's all from us. Thank you.